The space around Outpost Delta 9 was quiet today, too quiet for Commander John Harrison's liking. He stood on the observation deck of the U.S. Peacekeeper, his weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass as he stared into the vast emptiness of space. Stars twinkled in the distance, some belonging to systems ravaged by a war that had raged for 300 years. The Vraxian hegemony and the Alteran coalition. Two powerful alien civilizations locked in a conflict so ancient that most had forgotten how it started. Their war had consumed dozens of star systems and claimed billions of lives. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for one side to finally destroy the other. But humanity had stayed out of it. Earth and its colonies were still newcomers to interstellar politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 80 years ago. They were small compared to the warring giants, and Harrison was grateful for that fact. It kept them safe. It kept them neutral. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Susan Miller, her voice breaking the silence. "Actually, two transmissions. Priority Alpha." Harrison frowned. "Source." "Sir, one is from Braxian High Command. The other from the Alteran Governing Council." Miller's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed. They came in almost simultaneously. Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. In his 15 years of space service, he had never heard of both factions contacting the same vessel at once. Content. Both are requesting human mediation. "Sir." Miller looked up, her blue eyes wide with disbelief. "They're asking for us specifically, by name. The Peacekeeper and Commander John Harrison." The bridge fell silent. 5 other officers stopped what they were doing and turned to look at him. "That's unusual," Harrison said, mastering the understatement of his career. "Put them on screen, one at a time." The main display flickered to life. On the left side appeared the scaled, reptilian face of Vraxian Ambassador Zelthrak. His yellow eyes narrowed as he spoke, voice translating through the ship's eye. "Commander Harrison, the hegemony recognizes humanity's unusual problem-solving abilities. We request your mediation in this conflict, which has taken too much from both our peoples." The right screen lit up with the luminous, almost translucent features of Ashera, the Alteran representative. Unlike the Vraxian's harsh appearance, her face seemed to glow from within, shifting colors as she spoke. "The Coalition extends this invitation with hope, Commander. Your species sees patterns others miss. You think in ways we cannot. Help us end this war before it consumes us all." Harrison exchanged glances with his executive officer, Jack Peters, a stocky man with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. Peters raised an eyebrow. "Seems like we've developed quite a reputation." Harrison nodded slowly. Humanity's knack for unorthodox solutions had become somewhat legendary in their brief time among the stars. Where other species specialized and excelled in specific domains, humans remained versatile generalists. They saw connections that specialists missed. "Tell them we'll consider their request and respond within 12 hours, Harrison said finally. After the transmissions ended, he called an emergency meeting in the briefing room. His senior staff gathered around the oval table. Peters, Miller, Chief Engineer Henry Winters, Science Officer Laura Kelly, and Security Chief Paul Rodriguez. "Opinions?" Harrison asked, leaning back in his chair. "It's a trap," Rodriguez said immediately. "Both sides want to eliminate the other. Drawing us in puts humanity in the crossfire. Or they're genuinely desperate," Kelly countered. "The latest intelligence suggests both economies are near collapse. 3 centuries of war will do that." Harrison stared at the holographic display showing the conflict zone. Dozens of systems, billions of lives. "If there's even a small chance we can help end this war, don't we have an obligation to try?" The room fell silent again. Outside the viewport, stars continued to shine, some belonging to worlds at peace, others to planets that had known nothing but war for generations. "Send the acceptance," Harrison said finally, "but alert Earth Command. If this goes badly, humanity needs to be ready." The die was cast. For better or worse, humanity was about to step into the longest, bloodiest war the galaxy had ever known. 2 days later, Harrison stood in his quarters, reviewing personnel files on his tablet. If he was going to mediate this ancient conflict, he needed the right team. People who could think outside the box. People who weren't afraid to challenge 300 years of hatred. He tapped on the first file. Samantha Weiss, top diplomatic negotiator with 15 successful first contact missions, known for her ability to find common ground between the most different species. Next came Alan Price, xenoanthropologist who had lived among 7 different alien cultures. His papers on cross-species communication were required reading at the Academy. Maria Ortiz appeared next on his screen, former military strategist with a gift for seeing patterns in conflict. She understood war in ways few humans did. Last was Daniel Grant, ethics specialist who had pioneered new translation algorithms that captured emotional context across species. His work had prevented at least 3 interstellar misunderstandings from escalating into violence. Harrison sent the assignment requests and turned to look out his viewport. The Peacekeeper would reach Nexus 7 in 12 hours. The neutral space station floated at the exact midpoint between Vraxian and Alteran space. No weapons were allowed on board, and its systems were maintained by robots from a third, uninvolved species. Perfect place for peace talks, Harrison muttered. Or an ambush. The door chimed. Jack Peters entered, holding the security report. "We've been scanned 17 times in the last hour," Peters said. "Both Vraxian and Alteran vessels are tracking our approach." Harrison nodded. "Expected. Have they sent advance teams to Nexus 7? "Yes, and they're keeping their distance from each other. Station reports tension, but no incidents. Small mercies." When the Peacekeeper docked at Nexus 7, Harrison led his newly assembled team through the airlock. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth standard. Its white corridors curved gently, designed to avoid sharp corners where enemies might lurk. "Impressive architecture," Price said, looking around. "Designed to minimize confrontation." They were met by a hovering robot guide that led them to the central meeting chamber. The room was perfectly circular, with 3 identical tables forming a triangle. Symbols from all 3 species decorated the walls. The Vraxians entered first. Ambassador Zelthrak stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scaled skin a deep green that shifted to blue around his throat. 2 guards flanked him, their clawed hands resting near weapons they had been forced to leave outside. "Commander Harrison," Zelthrak said, his voice a low rumble even through the translator. "The hegemony appreciates your swift response." The doors on the opposite side slid open. The Alterans seemed to float into the room. Ambassador Ishera's translucent body glowed with soft pulses of light. Unlike the heavily armored Vraxians, the Alterans wore simple garments that caught and reflected their bioluminescence. "Commander," Ishera's voice came through the translator like music. "The Coalition welcomes you with hope." Harrison felt the weight of history in the room. These 2 species had been killing each other since before humans had digital computers. Now they were looking to his team for solutions. "Please sit," Harrison said, gesturing to the tables. As they settled, Harrison studied both delegations. The Vraxians moved with rigid, controlled motions, while the Alterans seemed to flow like water. Even their most basic movements revealed their profound differences. "Let me be clear," Harrison began. "We cannot solve a 300-year war in one meeting. But today, we can understand why previous peace attempts failed." Zelthrak's scales darkened. 17 formal ceasefires, all broken. "Because trust cannot exist between our kinds," Ishera added, her lights dimming. Weiss leaned forward. "Why did you both contact us? Why humans specifically?" The 2 ambassadors exchanged glances, perhaps the first moment of agreement between them. "Your species is young," Zelthrak said, "but you have already united despite your differences. You argue constantly among yourselves," Ishera continued, "yet you do not destroy each other." Harrison understood then. These ancient species saw something in humanity that they had lost in themselves, the ability to disagree without annihilation, the capacity to find unity in diversity. "We will help," Harrison said simply. "But first, we need to understand everything." The real work was about to begin. 3 days of talks had yielded little progress. The two sides could barely agree on the meeting schedule, let alone peace terms. Harrison watched as another session ended with raised voices and flaring tempers. The Vraxian delegation stormed out after an Alteran comment about cold-blooded thinking. "This isn't working," Harrison said to his team in their private quarters that evening. "We're following the same path as every previous mediator." Weiss nodded, her dark hair falling across her tired face. "They're going through the motions. Neither side believes peace is possible." "Then we change the approach," Harrison decided. "No more formal meetings. No more sitting across tables exchanging rehearsed positions." Price looked up from his notes. "What do you suggest?" "Immersion," Harrison said. "We split up. Some of us go live among the Vraxians, others with the Alterans. We learn how they think, not just what they say." Ortiz frowned. "They'll never allow it. Their homeworlds have been closed to outsiders for centuries." "They asked for our help," Harrison replied. "Let's make this the price." To everyone's surprise, both delegations agreed. 1 week later, Harrison stood in the shuttle bay, saying goodbye to his team. Weiss and Price would travel to the Vraxian homeworld of Thrakis. Ortiz and Grant would visit the Alteran system of Luminara. Harrison himself would shuttle between both worlds. "Remember," he told them, "we're not looking for who's right or wrong. We're looking for what they don't understand about each other." The Vraxian homeworld was hot and humid. Great domed cities rose from steaming jungles. Inside, powerful cooling systems kept temperatures low enough for the Vraxians to maintain their energy and speed. Weiss and Price lived in a diplomatic compound, studying Vraxian history and culture. They learned that Vraxians needed cool environments to think clearly. Heat made them sluggish and vulnerable. "Their entire civilization is built around temperature control," Price reported to Harrison. "Their factories produce cooling agents that they release into their atmosphere." Meanwhile, on Luminara, Ortiz and Grant discovered something equally important. The Alterans were photosynthetic. Their translucent bodies absorbed light for energy. Their cities were open to the stars, built from crystal that magnified the light of their sun. "They don't eat like we do," Grant explained during a secure call. "They absorb energy directly through their skin. Any pollution in their atmosphere is like poison to them." Harrison traveled between the worlds, collecting these insights. He began to see the terrible misunderstanding at the heart of the conflict. "The Vraxian cooling emissions are toxic to Alterans," he told his team during a rare joint meeting. "And the Alteran light-collecting cities appear as weapons to the Vraxians, who see them as attempts to raise planetary temperatures." Weiss gasped. "They're not just fighting over territory or resources." "No," Harrison agreed. "Each species thinks the other is trying to make the galaxy uninhabitable for them. They're fighting for survival." The team set to work developing environmental technology that could allow both species to live comfortably without threatening each other. Price designed sealed habitats that could exist on the same planets. Grant created translation programs that explained biological needs alongside words. But as their work progressed, Harrison received a disturbing message from Earth. Both the Vraxian hegemony and Alteran coalition had sent battle fleets to the edge of human space. The message was clear: find a solution, or humanity would no longer be neutral. "They're getting nervous," Peters said during their encrypted call. "Some factions think we're favoring the other side." Harrison looked out at the stars from his shuttle viewport. The team was making progress, but time was running out. Somewhere in the darkness, powerful forces were moving against them. Forces that perhaps didn't want this war to end at all. "Increase security," Harrison ordered, "and tell Earth to be ready for anything." The real threat, he was beginning to suspect, might not be from either of the species they were trying to help. Daniel Grant stared at his screen, his eyes burning from lack of sleep. Something wasn't right with the data. He had been analyzing the defense systems of both the Vraxians and Alterans, looking for ways they might live together peacefully. Instead, he found something disturbing. "These attack patterns don't make sense," he muttered to Ortiz, who stood behind him in their Alteran quarters. The room glowed with soft blue light that the Alterans thought comforting to humans. "What do you mean?" Ortiz asked, leaning closer to the display. "Look here, and here." Grant pointed to a series of battles over the last 50 years. "Both sides keep falling into the same traps, making the same mistakes. It's as if they're being manipulated," Ortiz finished, her military mind quickly grasping the pattern. Grant nodded. "Exactly. Someone is feeding bad information to both sides, keeping this war going on purpose." Harrison received their message while visiting the Vraxian capital. He excused himself from a meeting with Zelthrak and retreated to a secure room. "Are you certain?" he asked, looking at Grant's serious face on the screen. "Absolutely," Grant replied. "I've traced unusual data patterns in both defense networks. Someone is inserting false readings, fake attack plans, manipulated communications. Every time peace gets close, mysterious intelligence appears that reignites hostilities. Who would benefit from endless war?" Harrison wondered aloud. "We have a theory," Ortiz said, joining Grant on screen. "The Xenith Consortium. They've been selling weapons and resources to both sides for centuries. This war has made them incredibly wealthy." Harrison frowned. The Xenoth were a secretive species known for their trading networks. They'd rarely appeared in person, preferring to work through intermediaries. "Can you prove it?" Harrison asked. "We're close," Grant said. "I just need access to one of their trading servers." Harrison ended the call and returned to his meeting with Zelthrak. But something had changed. The Vraxian seemed more tense than usual, his scales darkening to a deep blue. "Is something wrong, Ambassador?" Harrison asked. "We have received intelligence that humans are developing weapons with the Alterans," Zelthrak said coldly. "Weapons designed to alter planetary temperatures in ways fatal to my species." Harrison felt a chill. "That's completely false. We've been working on environmental solutions that would benefit both sides." Before their conversation could continue, Harrison's communicator beeped with an emergency signal. It was Weiss. "John, we've been attacked," she said, her voice shaking. "Someone tried to access our research. Price was hurt defending the data." Harrison's mind raced. The same day they discovered possible manipulation, both sides suddenly received false information about human intentions. This couldn't be coincidence. "I need to return to my ship," Harrison told Zelthrak. "Someone is trying to sabotage these peace talks." The Vraxian studied him with unblinking yellow eyes. "Perhaps, or perhaps humans are not as neutral as they claim." Harrison hurried back to his shuttle, only to find it damaged. The engine had been carefully sabotaged. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to cause a catastrophic failure once in space. "Someone wants me dead," he realized. He contacted Peters on the Peacekeeper. "Jack, I need extraction. And alert all team members. We're being targeted." But it was too late for warnings. On Luminara, Ortiz barely survived an explosion in her quarters. The blast was blamed on Vraxian terrorists, further inflaming tensions. Harrison managed to reach the Peacekeeper using a Vraxian diplomatic shuttle. As soon as he arrived, he called an emergency meeting with his team. Those who could attend in person and others joining virtually. "The Xenith Consortium isn't just profiting from this war," he told them grimly. "They're actively keeping it going. And now they're targeting us." "What's our move?" Peters asked. Harrison's expression hardened. "We expose them. We bring both the Vraxians and Alterans to Earth, away from Consortium influence, and we show them who their real enemy has been for 300 years. As if in answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. 3 Xenith vessels had just appeared on their sensors, weapons charged. The real battle was about to begin. The Peacekeeper shuddered as the first Xenith energy blast struck its shields. Harrison gripped the edge of the command chair as Peters called out damage reports. "Shields at 80%, Peters said. "They're not trying to destroy us. Just disable us." "That makes sense," Harrison replied. "They want to silence us, not create an incident with Earth." Harrison opened a channel to the Xenith vessels. A hooded figure appeared on screen, its face hidden in shadows. "Commander Harrison," the figure said, its voice processed through translators. "You are interfering in matters beyond human concern. Leave this region immediately." "We were invited by both the Vraxians and Alterans," Harrison answered calmly. "And we've discovered your manipulation. For centuries, you've been profiting from their war." The Xenith made a sound that might have been laughter. "Prove it. Neither side will believe you over their trusted trading partners." The communication cut off as another blast rocked the ship. Harrison turned to his communications officer. "Send all of Grant's evidence to both the Vraxian and Alteran leadership, right now." "Sir, we've lost long-range communications," the officer replied. "The Xenith are jamming us." Harrison thought quickly. The Peacekeeper couldn't outfight 3 Xenith vessels, and they couldn't send messages. But they still had one option. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." Peters looked surprised. "We're retreating?" "No," Harrison said with a grim smile. "We're changing the playing field." The Peacekeeper shot into FTL speed, the Xenith vessels in close pursuit. For 3 days they raced toward Earth, taking occasional hits but staying just ahead of their hunters. "They're hurting us," Ortiz observed from the bridge. She had been rescued from Luminara and brought aboard during their escape, driving us away from both Vraxian and Alteran space. "Let them think that," Harrison replied. When the Peacekeeper finally dropped out of FTL near Earth, Harrison sent an emergency message to Earth Command. Within hours, a bold plan was formed. "This is insane," Weiss said during the briefing. She had returned from Thrakis with a bandaged price. "You want to invite both warring species to Earth, the planet with no significant defenses compared to theirs." "Exactly," Harrison said. "We'll show them we trust them by making ourselves vulnerable. And more importantly, we'll get them away from Xenith influence." To everyone's surprise, both the Vraxian High Command and Alteran Governing Council accepted the invitation. 1 week later, delegates from both species arrived in Geneva, Switzerland. The meeting hall had been specially prepared. One half was cooled to Vraxian comfort levels. The other half was filled with the specific light wavelengths Alterans needed for energy. Between them sat the human delegation. "Welcome to Earth," Harrison said as the session began. "For the first time in 300 years, you're meeting somewhere free from Xenith manipulation." Grant displayed his evidence on large screens, records of falsified attack plans, communications altered to make peaceful overtures seem like threats, trade deals structured to ensure the war continued forever. "This is why peace has failed 17 times, Harrison explained. "Not because your species can't coexist, but because someone profits from your conflict." The alien delegates were stunned into silence. Then anger rippled through both delegations, not at each other, but at the Xenith. "Is this why you brought us to Earth?" Zelthrak asked. "To show us we've been puppets." "Partly," Harrison admitted, "but also to show you something else." He led the delegates on a tour of Earth cities. They saw neighborhoods where humans of different cultures lived side by side. They visited environmental projects where seemingly incompatible ecosystems were balanced through careful management. "Humans argue constantly," Harrison told them. "We have thousands of languages, hundreds of nations, dozens of religions. We've fought our own wars. But we've learned something your species haven't had the chance to learn." "What is that?" Ishara asked, her lights pulsing with curiosity. "That differences don't have to mean destruction," Harrison said simply. "Look around you. Earth isn't perfect, but it's proof that diverse beings can share the same world." For the first time in centuries, the Vraxians and Alterans began to consider a future beyond war. But outside Earth's solar system, the HFY were gathering their forces. Their profitable war was slipping away, and they wouldn't let it end without a fight. The peace talks on Earth were making real progress. After 5 days, the Vraxians and Alterans had agreed to a temporary ceasefire across all battle fronts. Ships that had been firing at each other for decades now floated side by side, weapons powered down. Harrison watched the delegates with growing hope. They were no longer sitting on opposite sides of the room. Small mixed groups had formed, discussing specific planets and systems where they might test Price's environmental solutions. "It's working," Weiss said, joining Harrison by the window. Outside, snow fell gently on the Geneva landscape. They're actually talking about sharing planets. "Don't celebrate yet," Harrison cautioned. "The HFY won't give up their profit source easily." His words proved true sooner than expected. During the 6th day of talks, all communication screens suddenly activated. Emergency signals flashed from 3 different star systems along the border between Vraxian and Alteran space. "We're receiving reports of massive weapons fire," Peters announced, rushing into the conference room. "Defense systems at Kilari, Box Prime, and Altair 9 have all activated simultaneously." The peaceful atmosphere shattered. Vraxians and Alterans jumped to their feet, scales darkening and lights flashing in alarm patterns. "This is a trick," shouted a Vraxian general. "The coalition attacks while we talk peace." "Lies," an Alteran commander responded. "Your forces fired first." Harrison raised his hands for silence. "Wait, this is exactly what the HFY want. They're triggering your automated defense systems remotely." But it was too late. Both delegations were already contacting their fleets, ordering full battle readiness. 3 centuries of war couldn't be erased in 6 days of talks. "We're losing them," Price said quietly. "They're falling back into old patterns." Harrison refused to give up. "Grant, can you trace these system activations?" Grant was already working at a terminal, fingers flying across the interface. "The commands are coming through hidden subroutines in both defense networks. They're using the same backdoors they've always used to manipulate the war." "Can you block them?" Harrison asked. "Not from here," Grant said. "I'd need direct access to a Zenith control hub." Ortiz stepped forward. "Then we get you that access." A plan formed quickly. While the delegates argued, the human team gathered in a side room. Ortiz outlined a daring mission. "The HFY have a hidden base in the Caldari Nebula," she explained. "It's where they coordinate their operations in this sector. If we can get there, Grant can access their systems and prove they triggered these attacks." "How do you know this?" Weiss asked. "Because I found their navigation logs while analyzing battle patterns," Ortiz replied. "They always avoid that section of the nebula, even when it would provide tactical advantage." Harrison nodded. "We'll need a small, fast ship, and we'll need help." He returned to the main conference room, where the arguments had grown louder. With a sharp whistle, he called for attention. "Both your fleets are mobilizing based on false information," he said firmly. "We can prove it, but we need your help. I need 1 ship from each of your forces, with your best special operations teams." The room fell silent. Then Zelthrak spoke. "Why should we trust you now? Our worlds are under attack." "Because you've been fighting for 300 years. And what has it gained you?" Harrison asked. "Give me 48 hours. If I'm wrong, you can go back to your war. If I'm right, you'll finally know who your real enemy is." After tense discussions, both sides agreed. Within hours, Harrison found himself aboard a small, stealthy human vessel, accompanied by Ortiz and Grant. They would rendezvous with 1 Vraxian and 1 Alteran ship at the edge of the Caldari Nebula. As they prepared to depart Earth orbit, Peters approached Harrison. "This is beyond risky," he said quietly. "The HFY will kill you if they catch you." Harrison nodded. "Probably. But if we do nothing, billions more will die in a war that should have ended centuries ago." The small ship accelerated away from Earth, carrying with it perhaps the last hope for peace. Behind them, Vraxian and Alteran fleets were already moving toward confrontation, drawn once again into the endless cycle of violence that had consumed them for generations. Time was running out. The Caldari Nebula glowed an eerie purple, gases and dust creating strange patterns in space. Harrison's small ship moved silently through the outer edges, its engines muffled and its heat signature reduced to near nothing. "Sensors are picking up a structure," Grant said, looking at his screen, "hidden in the densest part of the nebula. Definitely not natural." The Vraxian and Alteran ships had arrived as promised. Each carried a small team of their best operatives. Harrison had been surprised to see how similar these elite forces were. Both valued stealth, precision, and efficiency despite their biological differences. "Remember," Harrison told the joint team as they prepared to board the Xenith facility, "we need access to their central computer. No unnecessary fighting." The Vraxian commander, Krell, checked his weapon. "If they resist, then we do what we must," Harrison replied. "But our goal is information, not revenge." Not yet. Their ships docked with the hidden station using stolen Xenith access codes. The facility was shaped like a vast wheel, rotating slowly to create artificial gravity. The team split into 3 groups, 1 Vraxian, 1 Alteran, and 1 mixed group led by Harrison. "We'll take the central hub," Harrison said. "You 2 teams secure the escape routes and watch for reinforcements." They moved through the dimly lit corridors, encountering surprisingly little resistance. Most of the station was automated, with only a small Xenith crew. They never expected to be found, Ortiz whispered as they approached the central command room. "Their security is minimal." When they reached the command center, they found only 3 Xenith operators. The hooded figures turned in surprise, reaching for weapons, but the combined team was faster. Within seconds, the Xenith were bound and secured. "Get to work," Harrison told Grant, who immediately began accessing the main computer system. "Their encryption is complex," Grant said, his fingers flying over the interface. But they were overconfident. They didn't change their protocols often enough. On the main screen, data began to appear. Grant had found what they needed, proof that the Xenith had been manipulating both sides for centuries. Evidence of false flag operations, altered communications, and sabotaged peace initiatives. Most damning of all, they discovered the trigger codes used to activate defense systems in the 3 border regions just days earlier. "Download everything," Harrison ordered. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. "We've been detected," Ortiz warned. "And there's something else. I'm picking up energy readings from deeper in the station. Something big." Grant's face paled as he found new information. "Harrison, they have a superweapon. A star destabilizer. And it's aimed at Earth," Harrison finished grimly. "They're planning to eliminate the peace talks by destroying our planet." The Vraxian and Alteran team members looked at each other in shock. "Why target Earth?" Krell asked. "Humans aren't their enemies." "Because we exposed them," Harrison explained. "And because Earth represents something dangerous to them. Proof that different species can live together peacefully." Grant continued downloading data while Harrison contacted both fleets. "This is Commander Harrison to all Vraxian and Alteran vessels. The Xenith are preparing to attack Earth with a star destabilizer. We have proof they've been manipulating your war for centuries, transmitting data now." As the evidence streamed to both fleets, Harrison and his team fought their way back to their ships. The station was now fully alerted, with Xenith security forces converging on their position. "We're cut off from the docking bay," Ortiz called out as energy blasts struck the wall beside her. Just when it seemed they might be trapped, a new voice came over their communications. "Human team, fall back to Section 12B. We will clear your path." To Harrison's amazement, it was the voice of Vraxian Fleet Commander Dirax, speaking not just to his own forces, but to the Alterans as well. The evidence is clear, Dirax continued. For 3 centuries, we fought the wrong enemy. Today, that changes. Throughout the nebula, something unprecedented was happening. Vraxian and Alteran ships, enemies for generations, were moving into formation together. Their combined fleet turned toward the Xenith station, weapons charging. The war had found a new target. 6 months had passed since the battle at the Caldera Nebula. Harrison stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned starship Unity, watching as the first joint Vraxian-Alteran settlement took shape on the planet below. The world had been named Harmony, a neutral planet in a system between their territories. Using human environmental technology, the planet had been divided into zones. Cooler regions for the Vraxians, light-rich areas for the Alterans, and mixed zones where both species could interact comfortably. Quite a sight, isn't it? Peters said, joining Harrison at the viewport. Harrison nodded. 3 centuries of war ended in 6 months. The final battle against the Xenith had been brief but intense. The combined Vraxian and Alteran fleet had destroyed the hidden station before the star destabilizer could be activated. Their forces had then moved through known space, eliminating Xenith trading posts and weapons facilities. The Xenith leaders had been captured and now faced justice in the first-ever trial presided over by judges from all 3 species, Vraxian, Alteran, and human. Admiral Harrison, a young officer, called from the doorway. The ceremony is about to begin. Harrison smiled at his new rank. After the crisis, Earth Command had promoted him for his role in ending the galaxy's longest war. He made his way to the main hall of the settlement, where representatives from all 3 species had gathered. The room was carefully designed, one side cool for Vraxians, one side bright for Alterans, and a comfortable middle ground where humans could move freely between both. Zelthrak and Ishera stood together at the center, no longer enemies but partners in a fragile peace. Beside them stood Weiss, who had developed a new translation system that accounted for biological differences in perception. Today we open the first Galactic Council, Zelthrak announced, his voice strong and clear through Weiss's improved translators. 3 species united in purpose. Where there was war, we build peace, Ishera continued, her lights pulsing in patterns of hope and determination. Where there was division, we find common ground. Harrison stepped forward to speak for humanity. We came to this galaxy as newcomers, the youngest spacefaring race. We didn't bring the most advanced technology or the largest fleets. What we brought was perspective, the hard-earned knowledge that differences can become strengths when understood and respected. The gathered crowd applauded. Among them, Grant and Price watched with pride. Their environmental systems now allowed species with completely different biological needs to share planets without threatening each other. Ortiz had helped design the new joint defense network that protected all 3 species equally. Outside the hall, through crystal-clear windows, Harrison could see children playing. Young Vraxians moved carefully around small Alterans, their natural differences no longer a source of fear, but of curiosity and friendship. A memorial stood in the center of the settlement, a simple stone column listing the billions who had died in the long war. It served as a reminder of what had been lost and what must never happen again. Later, as the Unity prepared to return to Earth, Harrison received a message from the new Galactic Council. They had voted unanimously to establish an academy where all 3 species would train together as explorers and peacekeepers. They want to name it after you, Peters said with a grin. The Harrison Academy for Interspecies Cooperation. Harrison shook his head. Tell them to name it after humanity instead. It wasn't me who ended this war. It was what humans have always done best, seeing past differences to find connections. As the Unity broke orbit and set course for Earth, Harrison took one last look at Harmony. From space, you couldn't tell which sections were Vraxian and which were Alteran. You could only see one planet, shared by different beings who had finally learned to see each other not as enemies, but as neighbors. The oldest war in the galaxy had been unstoppable, until humanity finally stepped in.